Hi guys, it's ALCHEMY. How's everyone doing? Good, I hope. I'm a little bit ill and it's very hot, so if I look sweaty and gross, coming to you live with the sweats and the illness, but it's not going to stop me doing a video, so here I am anyway. Today I'm here to talk to you about NEZ magazine, issue number 8. If you are new to my channel, you might not know that there is a thing that exists, this beautiful thing. I'm really scared I'm going to be put in YouTube jail for this whole scenario. If I disappear from YouTube for a while, maybe it's because of this. We'll see what happens. Don't hate me, YouTube. Anyway, it's a perfume lovers magazine. I have done overviews of issues 3 to 7 so far, only because issues 1 and 2 are only published in French. I really hope one day they will release them in English because I'm a collector person and I like to have entire sets of things. Anyway, it's a great magazine. If you're a perfume lover that has a thirst for knowledge, that likes to get involved in interviews with perfumers behind the scenes, learn about materials, this is the thing for you. I have more issues to read. This one's taken me the longest out of any. So I'm just gonna do a quick overview of what's inside of it. And yeah, I hope you like it. Gosh, I look really horrible today. So the main article of this one is about addictive substances, and it's not about addiction in general, it's about addictive substances in perfumery. I mean, there's lots of other stuff as well, but the main article in the center is about that. It's about addictive substances used in perfumery, the portrayal of things like booze and tobacco and just all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I'm just gonna go through and show you a couple of things that are in here. Whenever I read them, I think, oh, I'm going to talk about that, or I'm going to talk about that. But by the time I get to the end, it's so jam-packed that I always miss things. We'll see what happens. Okay, so first of all, there's a thing called the Nose in Fashion, and this is a kind of interview questionnaire with 4 people in the fashion industry. Hello, Siren, great timing. They ask the 4 people what smells they encounter in their line of work, what perfumes do they wear, things like that. It's just getting into the, you know, fashion and perfume are very linked. There was a time when they weren't, but now designers always have a perfume line. So they ask them what smells they can't resist, what's your favorite and least favorite smells, just stuff like that. It's a nice kind of light-hearted thing. Then, as always, there's a page for icons, and on this section they always touch upon not necessarily perfumers only, but people that are somehow tied to the fragrance industry, and they give you a little bit of background on them. I particularly love this one because it mentions Vera Kern, who, if you don't know who she is, or should I say was, she sadly passed away in 2018. She is, or was, I think an unsung hero in the fragrance world. She's one of those ones where if you know her perfumes, you know. She made great fragrances, and what's going to happen to her formulas and things, I think, is still quite uncertain unless anyone else knows any different. But yeah, she's this amazing lady that makes these tiny little bottles, and her perfumes were just bombastic and unashamedly complex and just really amazing. But they also talked about Leonardo da Vinci in this one, because did you know, even though he was an artist, he also dabbled in perfumery. He would make tinctures and all kinds of things. So yeah, lots of things like that. It's really cool with the little icons, and there's different people every time, of course. So the next part of the magazine is called Odorama, and in this one they focus on usually some type of molecule, some type of raw material, and then some type of perfumed environment. This time it was the turn of muguet. So if you don't know what muguet is, it is the perfume term for lily of the valley. Because lily of the valley is not, it doesn't give up its oil, it doesn't yield its oil, so it's about how perfumers create it and all of the different molecules that contributed towards the discovery of creating a lily of the valley note in perfumery, with some perfume examples as well. Then the raw material, I think, is lemon verbena. Perfect time to read about this, actually, but I just love the illustrations. It's so cool. It's such a feast for the eyes. I say this every time I do an overview of one of these magazines. battery ran out. So what was I talking about? Lemon verbena. Consumption, raw ingredient, perfumery examples of lemon verbena, and its origins as well. So whenever they focus on something like a raw material, they really dive in so you can learn about it in depth, and that's what I like. It's like a huge soaking in of knowledge every time you read one. So that's why I say if you're a perfume lover, it's great to read this magazine. It's so colourful. So the perfumed environment on this one is the children's bedroom. And reading this was such a nostalgic moment for me. They talk about the smell of Crayola crayons, strawberry shortcake, Play-Doh. I mean, all of these very nostalgic childhood smells. The most interesting one to me was doll heads. Have you ever heard a perfume reviewer or a person describe a perfume as smelling like doll heads? They talk about that. And what makes it, they tell you the molecules that make it up: heliotropin, vanillin, frambinone, and aldehyde C14, and how it's a comforting thing, and how it was purposefully made for dolls, so it would become a comfort thing for a child. And it's just, yeah, very cool. They talk about the lovey, or, you know, the soft toy that every child holds on to, and it kind of gets impregnated with their own child's familiar smell. So yeah, that was cool. Oh, I forgot to talk about the scratch and sniff. There's always a scratch and sniff that comes with it. And this one is, which two of these scents do you crave the most? It doesn't tell you what they are. And believe me, I've smelled both of them multiple times. Not because I'm addicted to them, but because I can't figure out what they are. I don't know what that is. It smells a little bit green. It could be maybe a marijuana thing. I'm not sure. The other one just smells really clean and fresh, like white musk. I don't know. Anyway, that's that one. So that was that. The next bit is connections, and I absolutely loved this. There was a whole article on the film. Look at the pictures sometimes just bang, hit you in the face. A whole article on the film Parasite. When I read this part of it, I thought, why are they talking about Parasite, the film? I don't know if you guys have seen it, but it's pretty cool. So it talks about how smell is kind of intrinsic to the story of the film. And it's not something I even picked up on really when I watched it. Maybe I should watch it again. But it talks about the smell of the, you know, the beaten down family compared to the smell of the rich family, and how it reveals certain things about them. Yeah, that was really interesting and unsurprising. I never look at the contents. I just turn the pages and see what happens, because I like surprises. So that's why I do that. The next bit was a whole thing on Japan. Two things in particular. It was about the Kodo incense ceremony, which is also something that really intrigues me. And it's one of those things that I always think, oh, I'll look it up, I'll read about that, because I want to know more, but I just never have. So yeah, it's about how many different things happen in this ceremony depending on which kind of ritual takes place. But the main one, I think, is a game where there are 5 different woods, and the host of the ceremony will put any number of woods together, and they burn them and make the room fragrant, and then the participants have to guess which combination of woods it is. So I was wondering, how do you play a game with incense? Now I know. The next part was kind of a photography part about the gardens of Kyoto. I mean, Kyoto is famed for its beauty and its gardens and its trees, so that was really nice to read about as well. And then it goes on to a guy who is a beekeeper. In-depth interview, lots of information about the pollination of flowers, how he can tell when bees make honey, and he goes into his hive, he can tell which flowers they've been visiting around the area based on the smell, which I think is a pretty cool talent. So if you like to know about bees and honey and the floral aspect of that, that's what that was. The next bit kind of blew my mind. I still can't get my head around what this is, but it's about some kind of installation called Infinity Blue, where these people built this giant sculpture that kind of looks like something from an alien world. I don't even know how that came about. But this giant sculpture, it puffs out these huge fragrant smoke rings. I think it was an installation somewhere, and something that I really want to look up more. You can see it a bit closer there. You see these big smoke rings puffing out? And it represented all different things. This one was a little bit of a mind meld moment for me when I read it. I couldn't get my head around what it's supposed to look like and how it would feel, but interesting. Then they always have a section called Aromas and Artwork, where they talk about a painting and what it's depicting. This picture scared me a lot. This lady's face is far too long and it makes me think of horror movies. She was a famous journalist who went against the grain from her time with her short hair and her smoking. Ladies just didn't do that in her time. And it talks about the smells of the picture and what this picture might smell like. And they always do that as well. So there's a little bit by Celine Eleanor. She's the granddaughter of Jean-Claude Eleanor, real famous perfumer. She writes a lot in this magazine, actually. She always has a little piece, and they're usually fantasy stories as well. So this one's about a perfume that thought it was a prince. It's very varied, this magazine, very varied. It goes from technical to fantasy. You're pulled all over the place all the time. So the main magazine, here, 50 Shades of Blue. It's all about the lavender harvest in the south of France. Some good little examples of lavender perfumes. They always have that in here. Whenever they talk about a certain material or you know, yeah, a certain material, they will always give you suggestions of great perfumes to try that contain that material. So, the next bit was amazing. There's usually an interview with a perfumer, and this time it was the turn of Serge Lutens. I don't know if you know him, but this interview was like reading an interview with Perfume Yoda. It was mind-blowing. They're always one of my favorite things to read. I like getting into the mind of the perfumer and just hearing things about their background. And he's very, very candid and very frank about his upbringing and his mother. But a lot of his answers are just, it's almost like it's a Perfume Yoda. They're kind of mystical and not super direct. Let me give you an example. So the interviewer asks him, what do you still find interesting about perfume today? And he says, I don't know. I'm in it. I can't say. This interests me. You're caught up in something just as I was caught up in the flesh of that woman. It was my flesh. There was no difference. I couldn't tell the difference. If I'd been a baker, I'd make bread the same way. It would be magnificent bread or magic bread. I've never snubbed anything. That wasn't really a mystical answer, but some of them, I read them and I was thinking, But yeah, it's got cool photos of him as well. Really nice. Then it's got a bit about some of his fragrances, of course. They always have little suggestions. Then the next bit, they always focus on a decade and talk about what was happening in that decade in the perfume world. So this time it was the 2000s, and it talks about the rise of flankers. Flankers weren't really a thing before that. There was a couple, of course, but the 2000s really saw all these brands releasing flanker after flanker and how it affected consumers, how people got a little bit tired of it and they stopped buying perfume or lessened their, you know, expenditure on perfume. So it talks about some of the more famous perfumes from that time, the rise of the sweetness as well, things like Flower Bomb, La Vie Belle, stuff like that. It was really, really good. I always like the decade part. They've done the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. Have they done the 90s yet? I can't remember. I told you these magazines are full of stuff. Then we have the Fantasy Perfumery. This is a recurring article as well. And they take people from the decade they've just talked about and they pretend like they've walked into a shop and they sell them a perfume. So this has some famous people from that time, including Harry Potter and Frodo Baggins and Carrie Bradshaw from Sex and the City. They paired Harry Potter with Savoy Steam from Penhaligon's, and Frodo Baggins they paired with Chypre Mousse by Larisa L. Legrand, which I've got a sample of, and that is such a great pairing. I think it's really fun. So then we go into addictive substances. So much information here, lots and lots of stuff. I mean, I won't go into too much, but there's a history of alcohol, which talks about how it came about and how it's used in perfumery. Plumes to Fumes, which is about tobacco. Then it talks about sniffer dogs as well. some really interesting information in there, where there was a sniffer dog that was so astute at finding addictive substances, shall we say. I'm not going to talk about that subject on my channel in case I get put in YouTube jail. That actually got a bounty on its head because it was so good. There were cartels looking for this dog to try and end its life because it kept uncovering huge stashes of their badness. Then you have a section called The Scent of Taboo. And what was this one about? Alcohol, tobacco, drugs of all kinds, psychoactive substances have been inspiring perfumers since the beginning of the 20th century. Fragrance is an ideal testing ground, allowing consumers to experience the thrill of transgression without risking their health. And it talks about perfumes like opium, perfumes that are named after addictive substances, and the whole how that came about, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's a few other things. Perfume freaks. What was this one? It's about, can we be addicted to perfume as well? And ultimately they kind of debunk that. It's not about being addicted to perfume, it's being addicted to possibly just the euphoria it can give you, but it's not an addiction, it's more like just a pleasure. I don't know. It was very deep, guys, you have to read it. And then we're coming towards the back. There's an interview with Luca Turin here, which is pretty cool. If you don't know who Luca Turin is, he's probably the most famous, I'm gonna call him perfume critic that exists. He's got multiple books out and he doesn't mince his words. A lot of brands wish to receive a 5-star rating from Luca Turin. When his reviews come out, everyone's like, oh, did I get a mention? Did I get a mention? I remember one of the reviews he wrote was literally just one word and it just said repugnant. That's it. I can't remember which perfume it was, but it made me laugh. Anyway. So yeah, he's essentially a scientist first and foremost. So he's kind of translated that into his love of perfume, and him and his wife are, yeah, they're very prolific perfume reviewers slash critics, I will say. Then we have not an interview, but an article about the House of Nikolai. I have some samples of these guys to try. I think Parfums de Nikolai was the first niche review I ever did many, many years ago. But it's about the history of the brand. It's not too big. It's got some examples of their perfumes, of course. Yeah, just what they're about, really. About their signature, about how they create their fragrances. And then the last couple of pages are always 30 perfumes that the NEZ magazine hand pick and write mini reviews on. It's multiple people that write the reviews about them. And this one, I usually read them all, but this time I just stuck to things that I knew or things that I might have been intrigued about. That's really nice. And then finally at the back, you always have where you can buy NEZ magazine, events that are happening. I'm always way behind, so I would miss them all anyway. So the final bit here is, sometimes when they release a NEZ magazine, it gets released with a perfume that you can buy alongside it that's made for the magazine by a perfumer in a collaborative effort with someone else. And this one's about Maurice Roussel, who collaborated with this guy, went to Hong Kong and made a perfume for the magazine. I haven't smelled any of the NEZ magazine perfumes. I would love to. So yeah, it's really, really nice, about tea ceremonies, things like that. And that, I think, is the end. Oh, the final thing is about the perfume market in China and how Chinese people consume perfume. I found that really interesting because I deal with a lot of Chinese people on a day-to-day basis in the perfume industry or in the perfume world. And this article just clarified a few things for me about why Chinese people have their preferences that they express to me on a daily basis. So that was really nice. Yeah, that's it. That's the end of it. That's this NEZ magazine. I don't want to hold this up too much because I'm really scared about the YouTube jail thing. It's just a quick overview. I'm going to move on to the next issue and just, you know, meander my way through it. I hope you guys like this video. I'm out from trying to make the world smell better, one video at a time. See you guys soon. Goodbye.